La Lanterna, a spotlight in Italian football, is a podcast that dives into the beautiful game seen from the eyes of two fans from the oldest team in Italy's point of view. My name is Fabrizio Cardone, Canadian and Genovese, together with my friend Matt Killen, an American-born and Genoa fan. Every week, we'll tell you all you need to know about the only team you need to know about, Genoa CFC. Plus, we'll have guests and provide updates from around the magical world of Italian football. Welcome back to La Lanterna podcast, episode number 14. Hey, how are you doing, Matt? How's it going?
Doing well, Fabry. Good to see you. Good to see you.
Oh, man, what a week. We're recording today a little bit late than usual, one day later, actually. So It's a Thursday for us. I think the podcast is going to come out on Friday.
Yep.
But what happened?
Man, what a week. Obviously, we had a big test over the weekend against Benevento, a rematch, actually, from a Coppa Italia game just a few weeks ago. Absolute transfer craziness this week with a huge amount of players coming in. A couple of them we kind of knew were going to happen, or there were rumors about, and one kind of just broke really quickly this week and was official immediately. I think our Genoa fans know exactly who we're talking about. And obviously we've got Pisa coming up this weekend. So quite a bit going on.
Quite a bit indeed. Well, where should we start? I don't know.
Well, let's break down the Benevento match a little bit.
Absolutely. So, all for that.
I know, obviously, this one didn't exactly turn out, I think, how many of us had wanted to. I think it's the first home match at the Ferraris, and I think we have got to also acknowledge the fans again, because the stadium was rocking. You could hear, as usual, you're going to hear the Gradinata Nord from the broadcast these days anymore, but it seemed even like the Distinti was getting into it. The fans were up for it. The stage was set. Everyone was ready for the first match of Serie B. Of course, we welcome Benevento, and there's a lot to say, I think, actually, about this match. I would, if my elevator pitch, the sum of this whole thing kind of was a little bit of like a welcome to Serie B, I think. This was a really, really gritty game that we played against Benevento, or maybe a game that Benevento played against us. Pretty physical. There were some calls that didn't exactly go in our favor, which we can talk about. But you kind of saw Benevento's defense really stand up in certain instances of the game. There was a kind of a style that they were playing that felt a little, I don't know what the term is, if it's not cheap, but there's that kind of just that extra little shove or things like that I saw every now and then that maybe put us off just a tad bit. But it finished 0-0. What, Fabry, what was your overall kind of view of the game? Or should we get into some of the early moments first? Because I know those were pretty big.
The hot ones. No, well, I'm going to carry on to what you just said. You're absolutely right. It was a super wake-up call. Yeah. You are absolutely right also in saying that it was not necessarily what the expectations were being, right, having seen the game that happened with Coppa Italia with a 3-2 win just like 13 days before that. Right. Nevertheless, you are absolutely right to the fact that it was a wake-up call for Serie B, how the games are. And now I understand what they mean by saying there will be these games, there will be these teams that you think you have it, but they're going to pull their teeth out and show all they have and just stop you. Just basically annoy the heck out of you, essentially, and just say you're not going to get here, you're not going to get through. So I've heard a whole bunch of commentaries and people starting to complain and starting to point fingers at Blessing and so on. I don't think he necessarily has a full fault for anything. Obviously, he did read the game and throughout the match at times well, sometimes late, sometimes on time and whatnot. I mean, essentially, no one's a mastermind. I mean, we would love to. We're it's important where we are. It's important what happened. It's important this whole change that is happening. Nevertheless, it's a wake-up call for what Serie B is going to be, long and tough, essentially. And this is what the outcome of overall this match that I can sum up in just these few words.
Yes.
But yes, so the match starts gung-ho. It was very nice. Good sprints, good, strong. It seemed like going our way. We were like basically as with the overall match anyways, but predominant on the ball.
Yes.
And what happened there?
Oh man. Well, this is the call we've still not really gotten over, but there was just really early in the match, it seemed like we were already set to establish that dominance that we were hoping to see. Portanova gets free. It was a great ball kind of played in, and he made a really good run to get on the ball as well. I think there was both a defender from Benevento and their keeper Pagliari, who had an amazing match, who came out at the ball. Portanova goes down. It looked like an absolutely clear penalty. Like in real time, this didn't look like a flop. It didn't look like he went down easily. He's dragged down.
The ref went all for it too. He whistled right immediately. So he didn't hesitate or waited. He just went with the whistle right away.
Immediately calls penalty, and it seems like this is going to happen. Obviously, you have Benevento fans, players protesting the call. It does get sent back for VAR, and this is kind of, this is the right criticism of VAR. Are we reviewing things all the time to review them, or are we reviewing things because we know or because it looks like there's an error that could have happened? And this was a play that objectively, to me, I'm biased being a Genoa fan, I know you are too, but objectively did not look like an error in calling that penalty. And when you break it down frame by frame by frame, by the way, first of all, you still do see his shirt getting pulled as he's going down to the ground. And I think I guess I assume the only way that this got overturned is because there's a thinking that Portanova went down too easily. And I think it's a little bit unfair because what you see happening, if Pagliari goes out in front of the ball, and it does look like he's trying to avoid Pagliari, which is a natural thing to do. That's not him selling the call. He's trying to not have his knee run into this guy's head, which is right there. And so he does kind of flatten out and lay out a second at the very end of the play. But like, this was clearly an opportunity for him to score. He was not just fairly pushed off the ball and the defense won that play. We don't get the penalty, and match stays 0-0. And I think this is a fair point for Genoa fans to be a little bit frustrated about.
Absolutely. And if I may add a little bit to that comment about the penalty, personally, I give the fault. I'm pointing the finger to VAR.
Yeah.
Essentially, what they did is they made the referee call back his decision based on only looking at the Pagliari situation, where it, as you said, it was like seemed that he did not touch the Genoa player, but essentially Portanova at that point was already losing balance based on the fact that the jersey was pulled in. It was clear, and it wasn't just like a slight touch. I could see at least, 10 inches pulled out, essentially. So, in those situations, obviously anyone is going to try to, he didn't fall immediately, and that's what happened. And essentially, anyways, it was a penalty badly taken away. It shouldn't have been taken away. And I think it shouldn't, because it shouldn't, but I think it kind of pushed the game towards what it gave an effect to the match itself.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, sometimes when this stuff happens, there's a weird kind of fog over the game, especially the team that didn't get the call. And it was, so I think actually I agree a lot with what you're saying, because the way that this match turned out was very much kind of like how that play was, I thought. I sent on the Genoa New York group chat. I didn't expect to leave this match absolutely hating Benevento, but here we are. And I kind of did, just because that's what it looked like the whole game to me, is that there were just these moments when, maybe it's a ball in the air and one of the players is going to head it, and you got like a little extra contact or something, or you get just that more cynical foul here and there. or maybe it's players whining or embellishing stuff too much, and all this stuff is part of every game. We see it all the time, but for some reason I just felt like you saw it more in this match. And I think it was also fairly clear that players could use that to their advantage, and the Benevento players did.
Absolutely.
Again, it's part of the game. You could say maybe they were clever in doing that, but it was a frustrating thing to watch, because you also saw the players, if they were getting any sort of physical response back, would fall down like a stack of cards. And I hate watching games like that.
I know. And those are hard to call, because I mean, you either play similar to EPL, and perhaps that's why EPL is a little bit better. I don't know, guess sort of like a loved or viewed per se, for the fact that the referees just let a lot of this happen, and just say, you know what, just get up, don't worry about it, like move on.
Right.
And I think that's what Serie should start to do, in my opinion, because a lot of players just use that too much to their advantage.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then what happened there also, we saw soon after, if I'm not mistaken, also a offside goal that was taken away. Legit. I'm not recriminating on that one, of course, but psychologically, obviously, that's another damper. And the first half after that started to be a little bit tougher, don't you think?
Yeah, I think it definitely was. There were moments where it seemed like maybe we're actually not on top of this match. And Benevento looked like they were a little bit sharper. I thought that their chances weren't always super clear cut, but we weren't. I think the flashiness that we saw, or not necessarily flashiness, but really the groove that we were in the first match against them, and also at least in the first half against Venezia, like that was not very much on display after some of this stuff had taken place. And it looked like it was going to be a tough game, after that stuff had happened.
Absolutely. And I think also this is the only point I give a little bit, not against. It's not, I shouldn't even start the conversation, this topic about that. But Blessin got a little bit blindsided by the approach to the starting 11 by Benevento, the formation itself. Yeah. So on the paper was a 3-5-2. Right. Compared to our 4-2-2-2 or 4-4-2, depending on however you want to look at it. Mm-hmm. And essentially, it was a fake 3-5-2 of Benevento, which indeed was in reality was a 5-3-2. 5-3-2, yes. Yeah. So that created this whole huge wall. I heard a lot of comments saying that Genoa played badly and so on. I think it was just well played from the defense. From Benevento and Super Pagliari, because especially in the second half, while Genoa kind of woke up because of the subs, and we'll talk about that just soon after this, but Pagliari might even steal, in my opinion, the MVP award for the match.
I think he actually was. I think he really was. And I mean, that was another takeaway from this match, is you saw, when you've got a really solid back line, this is what you get. I mean, I believe that Benevento's defense and Pagliari being part of that, they earned Benevento a point. I don't think the match would have been a draw for Benevento had they not been as strong. And I mean, to be fair to Benevento, it's not exactly a fluke. They've got probably one of the better defenses in Serie B. You've got Letizia, who I think was playing in that one of those roles too. In the midfield, but really was dropping back as more of like a right back in a back five. And sure, it's easy to defend when you've got 5 players back there, but there was a lot of fight and determination from their defense, and you have to give them a little bit of credit for that. So
absolutely, and not to mention Glick and so on. Like,
that's right.
We know these players quite a bit.
Yep.
Even from the Serie days. Yep. And then, as I mentioned to you, the second half totally changed the show of the game. Mm-hmm. Blessin started to did the first changes around the 60th minute, so 15 minutes within the second half, and that's where I thought it totally changed. So what happened there is you saw, and I remember you and I actually chatting on WhatsApp about this, and I was saying to you, both Portanova and Ekuban were great. I still believe that they're great players and so on for our cause and whatnot. In that specific game, they were either overshadowed by their adversaries, mm-hmm. or it was not necessarily their best day. They weren't playing bad. It was just not their best day.
Yeah.
Indeed, at the 64th minute, he changes them
Yep.
and brings in Jagiello and Yeboah.
Yep.
And to me, that changed drastically because Jagiello, we've seen him even in the past. So he's a return that he was at Brescia on loan. And he brought this verve of freshness and just like that sparkle that was Portanova was not being able to give. And Yeboah on sub to Ekuban, which was a little bit, had a lot of troubles because of defense, had that extra that Ekuban doesn't give. Does not mean that Ekuban is a bad player. It just means that that quality of Yeboah was better for that specific scenario and so on.
It was. Yeah, I mean, there was a noticeable difference as soon as they came on at 64 with both players. Yeboah had a lot of chances. I think there's probably one that he should have scored, and I know we'll probably talk a little bit about the offside, which unfortunately was fairly called. If it were me deciding the man of the match for Genoa, I might even say Jagiello, or Jagiello was our man of the match, just because he did have, there's a different dynamic to our offense when he was introduced, and how he was connecting some of the play and just even that energy that he was bringing, especially at that part of the game when a Benevento side like that. You have to remember, defending all game long is just a tiring thing to do. So bringing on like a new set of legs like that in a skillful set like that, I think really can go a long way, and we saw that.
Absolutely. The only two changes that Benevento did on the midline, which were more on the mid defense side. So that's all they did, just to keep that fresh air. So as you said, Jagiello did a fantastic job. I actually fully agree with you. They did not give him justice when it came down to like the final votes of all the players and whatnot. But while giving the higher votes, I think, for Gudmundsson, once again, great player again. And we both always, praise him all the time, right? But I do agree with you now that you're saying that even though he did play way less, so about 25 minutes, if I'm counting those correctly, I think he was the best player from a Genoa perspective, hands down. Yes.
He changed the game. And I know there are a lot of fans that really like Frendrup as well, and there's a lot of reason to appreciate the contributions that he's made and continues to make, by the way, in that position in the middle of the pitch. But it just seemed like we needed that change, and you saw it pretty much from the time he came on the pitch. So
absolutely. Then that's a little bit part that I'm not too happy with, the fact of deciding to take out Coda 4 minutes to the end, and 4 minutes, 3 minutes, 2 minutes after that, changing Bani for Ilsanker. Now, Bani could be because he was tired, so that was okay. It was the fact of taking out Coda for Yalcin, which I don't know. I was not too happy about that. What do you think?
Well, I mean, if you're going to do it, why are you going to do it at 86? Like we got Yalcin some playing time. I like Yalcin too. I think he's a great player, and he looks like he's a great player. But if we're making these changes at that moment, if we're Benevento and we're trying to get a draw, I get that much more than if we're trying to actually put something on and get a win at the end of the match. I mean, look, Yalcin looked lively too when he came on, but you gave him 3 minutes plus extra time to do something about it. So what are we going to expect to get out of that? And then the 7th to 89th minute is just completely crazy. So I don't know what happened there, if there was some sort of miscommunication, if players were not ready and they were supposed to come on earlier, but you don't want to see something like that. I think we needed to have a quicker response in order to get something out of the match if we wanted to send somebody else on.
No, Matt, we're nitpicking on this because essentially I did not dislike the match. Obviously, I would have wanted the 3 points because we're at home. It was the opener against a team that on the paper looks like below us, et cetera, et cetera. Take that all on aside. I think it still showed that Genoa dominated the game. The chances were there. We are making chances, contrary to what we were being used to the last couple of years.
That's very fair. I mean, look, we saw the amazing Yeboah header where they basically dunked on a player. The last match, he had a clear-cut chance in this match, and they just didn't quite get enough on it. And that wasn't the only instance. There were a couple other opportunities we had that, maybe in another game it's in the back of the net.
Yeah.
It's not like we were completely stripped. We didn't pepper their goal either, I think it's fair to say, but we had enough chances on there. There's a reason why Pagliari is man of the match. It's not because he's sitting there watching.
Thank you.
Happen. So
exactly. So if he's become the MVP of the match, and that's like a given for all newspapers, all critiques, and so on, that means something.
Right.
He didn't become the best player because we didn't have our chances.
Yeah.
So just to wrap the match day 2 up, so we had just, I'm not going to go too much in depth about them, but just to quickly, for fair say, so we had also another huge match which actually beat us by audience, like people in the stadium. So overall the Genoa Benevento had 22,000 people, which is huge, humongous, beautiful. The spectacle, as you said, was like tremendous and amazing. But the other big match of Serie B, which had over 26,000 people, was the highly expected newly promoted, both of them, Bari Palermo.
They say it had to be Palermo Bari. It's got to be there's only one stadium that's big enough to have well, maybe
that many.
more than one, but
well, probably no. The other two are just only Palermo and Bari.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's it. So Palermo opens up at the half an hour in. So it seemed like a smooth sail for them. But then about 20 minutes in the second half, they tie with a nice goal from Bari. A few minutes after, towards the end, then they get also, the Palermo gets also a red card, which is almost useless at that point because the game is almost at the end, obviously. But some could say, well, 1 minute men last in the last few minutes could make that difference, which probably that's what happened too. So how I don't know, I didn't see too much of the match. I'm just going to focus a little bit more on this game rather than the other ones, but just because of the importance of it, because I think that both Bari and Palermo are going to be strong contenders anyways for the top 8. But I don't know. I don't know how much you followed about it, Matt. But how do you think between the two was the better team?
I didn't actually catch the match, but I think if you're a fan of either team, you've got to be really, really encouraged with already what you're seeing from both, because what Palermo showed in the first match and again in this one, and you can say the same about Bari, honestly, especially they had a pretty difficult opening match against Parma. They look like they're teams that can play. They're scoring goals. There's some good attacking talent on both sides. I think that maybe there's some question marks a little bit on. I was more skeptical of Palermo for whatever reason. I just kind of thought, maybe coming into this, there's a lot of hype around the team. They're a big name, but are they really like stocked with players? They just had this managerial thing that happened right before the season started, and I think their sporting director too. Is it going to be a weird season for them also with new ownership? What's going to happen? But it looks like actually they're pretty well set up with especially some attacking talent and some players that can be kind of dangerous. And Bari seems kind of similarly equipped to do pretty well in Serie B. And I think both teams are going to feel, even though neither one, and I'm not sure exactly where Bari Palermo ranks on the rivalry side of things and all that. I know both in Southern Italy, but not exactly very close to one another. But I think you got to feel pretty good that coming out of these two matches that each of them have played, if you can get that result, even though you want the 3 points, you've got a chance to get it on most weeks. So.
Absolutely. If I look at the stats, it's quite equal. The only major difference between the two was ball possession, so it goes 63% to Bari compared to Palermo. Otherwise, everything else is quite on the same side.
Yeah.
Other matches quickly to mention are Ascoli Spal 1-1, ends in a draw. Lots of ties.
Yeah.
By the way, or anyways, in the ones that were important too. Then obviously Genoa, Benevento, we talked about it. Perugia, Parma, another tie.
Yep.
Then Cagliari, Cittadella, I did watch that one. Tremendous opener for Cittadella, and then Cagliari slowly towards the end with their Mancosu, which came back after I can't remember how many years, and did the last 2-1 goal. That was a tremendous game for them. I'm happy for them. Sad for Cittadella because it was a tough game for them.
Yeah.
Away too. by the way, for Cittadella, but nevertheless. Then you have Cosenza, Modena. Like, what are our friends from Cosenza are they doing? They're first in the league. That's fantastic.
That's amazing. I know. We
Incredible.
are top of the league. Say we are top of the league. Yeah, it's pretty funny.
And then you get Frosinone Brescia. That was a huge upset, in my opinion. I'm not trying to underestimate Frosinone, but Brescia came in the league, the championship this season, anyways, as a high contender for the top flight, anyways. But is lost a 3-0 away, but in Frosinone.
I would have had this at the beginning of this. I know Cosenza are also up at the top, but Cosenza and Frosinone as the two clubs at the top of Serie B after 2 matches. It's 2 matches. It's always something that looks like this at the beginning of the season. But Frosinone look okay. They look pretty good. I wasn't expecting that either. I mean, I wasn't expecting them to be I was thinking more mid-table for them this season. Not an easy out, but
it could be. I did remember some people talk about that there are these teams surprise where you did not expect anything, if not even, you said mid-table. Some people even expected them to be on the lower side of the table, but maybe they are the surprise team this year that nobody was expecting anything from them. Who knows? Then
that or they just played Modena and Brescia, and neither of those 2 teams are going to be very good this year. So I guess we'll find out.
We'll find out exactly. Then we had the Pisa Como. I saw a little bit of that match too. Incredible, the fact of how Como managed to score first. Then they got the tie through a penalty, Pisa, which are our next adversaries anyways, right? So it's important to also overview what Pisa is doing.
Preview.
And Como, again, another team that it was expected to be, in my opinion, besides the signings and so on, like one of the weakest anyways of the league. And then they score again. So they, as in Como, score again around the 77th minute. So 2-1 up in Pisa, which is like incredible in my opinion. And only at the 89th, you get the tie from Torregrossa for Pisa to not leave their own home ground defeated. So at least they managed to get the tie. So I don't know. Looking in perspective from our match, it's something that can be seen as, okay, we might not have that tough of a team against us, but at the same time, it could be a team that's saying, hey, wait a minute, we've lost so much. Let's look at the mistakes and let's all fix them as fast as possible.
Totally. I mean, I understand both points. I understand fans after that match feeling like we needed to add more to the squad. And there were similar comments, I think, fairly or unfairly, about two players that I feel like have been really picked on by Genoa fans at the beginning of the season. Martinez, our keeper, and Payet, our left back. And I'm curious what you think about that. I mean, there were definitely moments in the match for me. I didn't think Martinez had a bad match, but there were a couple of instances. There was one, I think, where he had kind of a poorly hit pass or something that maybe added more danger than it needed to. And it kind of seemed like he was a bit shaky still at the back. If you wanted to focus on that, you could. I thought he had an okay match. I didn't think there was anything like really glaringly obvious, but if you're looking for it, there were moments in that match where you could say, is this still right? Are we sure about this? What did you think?
Well, I agree with you. But before I mention more about Martinez, I want to our Genoanis that are listening to us, I want to remind them, for example, about Perin.
Yeah.
We all support him and consider him one of the best goalies that we had for long in the past few years anyways. But, as we say in Italian, he did his own capelle. Capelle means, I'm not going to tell you literally what that means, but it's like bad moves and bad things that he did.
Yeah.
But at the end, he gave security at the back and so on. I still have hopes for this guy. If management chose him, if the club chose him to be the number one, there is a reason that we don't know. So we're all only basing on suppositions, on things that we see from the outside. We don't know what's happening in the locker room. We don't know the rationale behind why are they choosing a loanee versus an owned goalie, which seemed to be anyways possible. But yes, I can see there can be some iffy moments, some moments where it doesn't seem like the Martinez seemed too strong as we've seen in the past games and the one or two episodes that we might have seen against Benevento. But I still see that he's a valid goalie, a valid player. I think that if we give the guy trust and we don't banter him too much, I think he can build confidence more and more and more. Mind you, we were talking about it before. When we were talking about the Benevento game, and I was looking at the lineup, right? And if you look at the lineup and you look at the back, so essentially the goalie can be a great goalie, but also thanks to his defense, right? And you look on the right side, you have Bani and Hefty, which have been both playing also last year. So that type of that type of understanding among the players is there. Martinez is new, so at the back, there's not that rapport that was built. And then you have Drakusin and Payats, which we're going to talk about Payats in a second, but these are new players altogether. So I think they still need to find themselves. That's what I'm trying to get at.
I agree. I don't think it's time to write off really anybody in the squad right now. I understand why there's a reflex to that, because we've only got so much time before we can change the squad. And so if you're not seeing something that you like in the first few matches, this is kind of for better or worse, is a commonplace thing nowadays, where it's like, we got to change them. We've only got this window, and then we're stuck with them for the full year. I think Martinez could still be a good keeper. There's kind of an interesting counterpoint stat, which you could put me on the pyre for being a computer or a laptop manager, or whatever the phrase was that we had heard earlier in the pods. But Martinez actually had a 90% pass rate. I'm sure you don't know off the spot what Pagliari's was, but he actually had a 49% accuracy. So if you're thinking about it from that perspective, now that being said, hardly any of the balls that he played were long balls. So a lot of them are going to be short. It's a lot easier to make an accurate pass when you're passing to 5 feet to your left. But that's what seems to be where Blessing and some of the others like from Martinez. And maybe he does have those shaky moments every now and then. I think keepers are going to have those things. If it doesn't cost us, I think we've got to write it out, and hopefully we see him really kind of grow into his game and become a little bit more confident.
Absolutely. And then let's move on a little bit to Payats, or however it's his name is, and I apologize if I'm butchering his name.
I think it sounds right to me.
I'm seeing more and more Genoani that are just have written him off already by saying, management, Spurs is out there already looking for a left back to replace him because he's just cannot be proposed. We had a quick conversation before the opening of the podcast, and essentially I still think that both Benevento, and we both agree on this, and so forgive us for our listeners that are not agreeing with this, but both Benevento and the opener were with Venezia, exactly. The Payats had above 6.5, 6.7, 6.8, something like that. These votes are not given just pulling numbers out of a hat. So he must have done something right to get an average vote of that kind. What do you think?
Yeah. I think you're talking about some of the player ratings you can find out there. And if you're like me and you're on SofaScore all the time, actually Payats is our best rated player this season, which is probably it's like a scanner's moment for our fans. What the hell is going on? Don't trust that data. But I agree. I think the pod were more on the Payats team than not at this point, at least so far in the season. There were a couple of plays in the match where I thought that he was really showing his quality. I mean, he had pretty long shot from outside the box that was sort of troublesome for Pagliari. I think it was maybe in the first half. Was really pretty active in crossing. Not all the crosses were completed, but it seemed kind of like he was definitely involved in the match. Again, his style is very, very different, of course, than Memo's. We're not going to have probably a left back of his quality or with his exact kind of makeup. And I'm not sure that our fans are expecting that. But I saw some inventiveness and some engagement from him in the match. Maybe my bar is a little bit too low for what we're supposed to see, but he looked pretty lively. I didn't see him there. There's always a chance every now and then where some of these guys get beat one-on-one or something like that. And maybe you could argue that Payet is a little bit less of that type of a player. But I haven't seen a huge amount of instances where it's like, well, the ball's going to Payet. You never know. We might just lose it in our own half. And then they're on the, I've not seen it like that.
I haven't either. Like, you can see a little bit some entrances that are a little bit harsh and so on.
Yes, right.
But as we talked about from the beginning, this is what happened. It happens in Serie B. Yeah. And let's not forget, we're not in EPL. So we're not in Champions League. We're not, and so on. So, I guess he was rated one of the best left backs from last season. So, I don't know. I still see him worthwhile to continue. Now, who else do we have there at the back? Not too much. We have Sabelli, we have Sibora, Vogliacco, perhaps more or less. Ilsanker, depending on wherever you put him, because he's a little bit of a jolly there.
Right.
And that's about it.
Yeah. I don't know really what to think about our defense at all, because I like Bonnie, I like Hefty. I think most fans probably do. Payet is looking, I would say he's looking promising. I
Me
might
too.
be the minority there, but I think he is. Ilsanker is old and good, but I don't know we're going to be playing him a full match.
We've seen only 2-3 minutes, so I haven't even still seen enough of him.
Yeah.
To do any type of valuation.
Yeah. And where are we placing him? Could he operate actually in, just a central center back pairing? We could also, of course, play him as a defensive midfielder. But does he require more of like a 3 at the back type of a thing? He's going to play a whole match. I don't know. We don't know enough about him really to make a call, to your point. And then I feel similarly about Dragoshin. I've seen 2 games from him now. I did not really like what I saw against Venezia. I thought he was better in this match, but it wasn't something for me that was a major standout. If you consult the SOFA scores of the world, they'll tell you he had a 7-2. I didn't see that when I was watching the game. But there wasn't anything for me that was memorably like, oh, okay, this is what Dragoshin is providing, but I could have missed some of that.
Totally agree. So let's go now to the transfer market. We were like dormant for a little bit. Seemed like we did our transfer market to the T up until now. We got applauded for whatever we have done so far. Mm-hmm. And then bam, magically 3, as you said at the beginning, most of them we were all expecting, especially the one that you mentioned that the Genoani we were talking about, which is Aramo. We've been waiting for him for forever. So it's like a lot of people are saying that he doesn't want to come here. He's looking for different teams and so on, without understanding that a lot of times, I'm not saying they're wrong, but we don't know. And a lot of times some dealings behind the scenes with teams and with the players, there's a whole bunch of back and forth, which is called transfer market for some reason, because they have to understand with what formula is it going to be first on loan and then purchase, and what purchase, are there going to be any type of goals attached with stuff like that. Anyways, It happened, and we got Aramo, the famous trequartista that Blessing was looking for and everybody was hoping for.
Yes.
What do you think about Aramo?
An amazing player. It obviously it's a little bit of an arrow in our quiver that we got him from Venezia. Venezia, by the way, looked pretty darn good without him. But this is a guy that's got, if you watch his highlights or anything on YouTube, it's kind of a little bit of everything that he's going to bring to the team. He's got that kind of ability. Some of those goals he's got, he's kind of like juggling the ball in the air and has some crazy like overhead kick or something. Really technical. He can be a free kick specialist if we need him to be. He can either kind of try to put the ball on goal or kind of whip it in. He's got that ability to kind of also like really, I one of the things, I didn't watch him as much last season, so I'll be honest about that. But I think that he has the ability to also cross the ball in really well too. So from the wings and plays as almost like a wing type of a position, or play in more of a central attacking type of a position. So I think it's really interesting how he fits. I know.
So he's not a trequartista
in
your eyes.
I don't see him as quite as much of that. I mean, I think, but this is the interesting thing to talk about, because I know that, like, if we were to talk to Venezia fans, and I know when we had Marco on a few weeks ago, he had mentioned this from the Rigori podcast. You know, he has his days, and the way I think when we were talking about him and our understanding of him, you know, he can be kind of that creative midfielder, that sort of, you know, ethereal or whatever the word is, where he's maybe kind of coming in and out of matches, or maybe he's not exactly like an engine type player that's running all over the pitch, and that doesn't seem as much like what Blessing is trying to do. But what I've seen from him, at least in, like, I'm looking at highlight clips, okay, I'm not looking at the full matches, but he actually kind of looked like he was playing in some of those Ekuban type positions. Like, it could have been in the center of the pitch, it could have been a little bit farther out wide, but just being in a place where he's kind of dangerous on the side of the box, drawing defenders in because he's really skilled on the ball, and then bring it back across. Or, you know, he's got enough, I think he has enough pace to kind of really kind of push the defensive lines back into the box more too. So I was kind of surprised by that as well. I was expecting a guy kind of with a lot of really neat key passes and, you know, fancy footwork and stuff like that. I think he does have the fancy footwork, but the stuff that I saw was less of him kind of, you know, megging defenders and stuff like that, and more really kind of stretching defenses out is how I would kind of say it. So I'm very curious, actually, of the signings we have. This is the one, for me, it's the biggest question mark of where he fits in the team. And I'll be really curious to see how Blessin sees him, if we're going to keep our kind of shape the way we have it now, or if he's going to show up in a different way.
Let me throw something to you. What about a 4-3-3?
I mean, I like it, and I kind of wonder actually how he would fit in something like that, because we could have a 4-3-3 and have him maybe with I'm not going to give away some of the other transfers that we have coming on board, but like 2 defensive midfielders behind him in more of an attacking position in that kind of 3 in the midfield, or potentially a little bit farther out wide. I think that probably you're going to want him to be more centrally involved, even though he can stretch the play out, he can kind of bring things out on the wing. But I know that we really liked that when I think it was first, I remember Blessin first playing this against Juventus last season. I think that's the first time maybe he had done it, at least with this team. And it looked pretty promising, actually. We were thinking we were going to see more of that this year. So I'd be open to it. What do you think?
So let's park it and talk about the other 2 players that we actually just got the news. One was a surprise from me. Perhaps some voices were already happening, rumors and whatnot.
Yeah.
But the other one was a total slam bam in 24 hours type of news. It was just like, whoa, where did that come from? So let's talk about the first one. So Puskas. Very well respected and known in Serie B because of his past with Pisa.
That's
and
right.
with Italy, anyways. And what's your takes on the player?
I think he's a great addition. I mean, he reminds me a little bit of Coda, which maybe isn't super spot on, but I could see him being more of a 1-for-1. We saw Yaltsin come in for Coda at the end of the match against Benevento. Yaltsin for me is much more of that attacking kind of midfielder type position. He's really an interesting player, but he's not really like a forward. Puskás is like a goal scorer. You know, the type he's got the ability to run onto the ball, get into the right place. He's got a real rocket when he shoots the ball. It just kind of like rifles off of his foot. And he's had some great success with Pisa. He his parent club was Reading FC in the English Championship, and he's got actually a pretty good amount of goal scoring tallies there too. And I actually think it's kind of a steal for us. Reading have been for those who don't follow the Championship very well. And I don't blame you, but Reading were a club that not too long ago, only probably 2 or 3 seasons ago, were one of the better sides in that division, and they had a really good attacking threat that was part of what was there. I think they've had a couple of coaching changes. I'm not sure if it's been a few since that time or just one, and I'm not sure exactly kind of the impetus for him joining Pisa in the first place. But I think he's clearly a proven player in Serie B. I do think that some of his skill that he's shown in the Championship is promising, because I know that division is a difficult one. And yeah, he's an excellent player at the very least for squad depth. He's also a player that if you saw him starting, I don't think anyone would be shaking their head and saying, "What are we doing?" So it's a great addition, I think.
So would you say he's a great sub for Coda and or vice versa?
I think that's exactly probably how Blessin sees him. He's going to be a guy that's going to come in, maybe hopefully in the 65th or the 70th minute instead of the 86th. And he can offer a similar type of a game, and just has a completely like wicked shot. So it should be, I think that's how I see him playing anyway.
Third, but not least player. So people were hoping for a regista. People were hoping for someone that did, I don't know, like I don't even know who I want to compare him to, but this was the one that I mentioned before about just in 24 hours, boom, it all happened like that. Welcome back to Mr. Kevin Strootman, however it's I don't know the pronunciation for the Dutch players. Sometimes it's very, very tough.
Right? I don't know.
I'm here. I heard that it was Strootman, but it's fine.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, people are saying, "Oh, he's broken. He's old," because he barely played with Cagliari. Bad season for him. But in those 6 months with us, if we have even that amount of games and or the quality that we had when he was with us, Badel was a god with him.
Yeah,
that's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah. Well, look, if you like Badel and if you like Frendrup, how can you be upset about this signing? This is like, if he's coming off the bench, this is a guy we're bringing off the bench. Like, that's incredible. And I don't think he will, actually. I think he might be straight in the starting lineup. And actually, this might have been where you're going with the 4-3-3 with those 3 players all playing together. I didn't want to give that up beforehand. I said that.
It's okay.
I mean, but remember though, at the beginning of the season last year, when he wasn't in the side, and we were complaining about all the lone players that were gone, Scamacca and all these other guys that we had, and Strootman obviously came in the second half of the season before, so 2 seasons ago now.
Yeah,
the January transfer window, and made such a difference in our ability to stay up that year. And it already
made the difference. Yeah.
So you got to be excited about it. I actually, when I first saw the graphics floating around, I thought it was some like fan page or something, and it was like bullshit. But it was actually the Genoa graphic that they'd made with like the Superman or whatever. And
that was fantastic.
It's like, this is actually happening. It's crazy.
Yeah, when it was a Bale, right?
Yeah,
that they showed us, like, okay, what does that mean? Batman? Who's Batman?
Yeah.
No, it was actually, yeah. So starting 11, now that we have the 3 new players at hand, how do you see it? How do you see it like change?
It's really tough to say, only because we just got these guys in now.
Right.
I do think we will see at least 2 of them as substitutes in the match. I actually think Puskás may come pretty much straight away into the side as a substitute off of it, just because, again, of the formation and how things are looking. I wouldn't be terribly surprised if we didn't see any of them in the first 11 to begin the match. I think where it'll be interesting. We've been lining up in this kind of 4-2-2-2 or 4-4-2 or however you want to think about it. Does someone come in for Porto Nova? I don't know. Could be Aguero, by the way. Do we see Aramu kind of come in that place? Does it make sense for him to be there? I'm not sure. Are we playing somebody else alongside Koda? Is Goodmanson kind of moving up and someone's taking Ekuban's place? How is that going to work? Are we flipping kind of the order a little bit with some of that stuff? So I think it's really interesting. I mean, for me, I have the biggest question mark, like I've said, about where Aramu exactly plays within the team. Strootman makes a lot more sense, but who do we sit though if he starts? Because it's got to be Badel or Frenrip pretty much, unless we go to a 4-3-3. So I don't think we're going to go straight to a formation change in this match. It's just too much. Obviously, you got new players. You have to get the system. You got to get everybody familiar with their roles and all of that stuff. And
Blesson actually showed us that the new one arrives there and he doesn't throw them in just like that.
That's right. Yeah. We haven't seen like Yeltsin's actually a decent example. He's been coming in off the bench only. Massimo Coda maybe is the only counter to that, but this is the leading scorer of Serie B last season, and we've been sorely needing a forward who, by the way, we lost a few of them. So you're right.
And now we have two.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think probably we're not going to see them in the first 11 in this match. I do think we will see them in future matches, and hopefully we'll get some early minutes for all three of them at some point in the match this weekend against Pisa.
Absolutely. So just to wrap up with the transfer market, just like smaller names, for now still rumor, but Calon, it seems that he might be going to Verona.
Yep.
Another one that I wanted to talk about was Charpentier, which seems might be going to Parma.
Interesting.
Then Besaggio officially went to Juventus on loan. I thought first as a sale, but instead it's on loan to the Juve under 23 squad.
Interesting. Okay.
And Calò is another huge contender to be going to our friends at Cosenza. So
Calò's been linked with like half of Serie B at this point, I feel like.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, and Candela was the other one, which went to on a separate transaction, but went to Venezia.
Yeah. Interesting stuff. And I know this is not us, but I have to say, I thought it was interesting that the rumored signings for some of the teams in Serie A this season, thinking about Salernitana and Lecce in particular, with potentially Umtiti joining Lecce. Just like, what is happening right now, guys?
Yeah, and Barcelona is carrying on the pay stuff too.
Yeah. But well, so this is something we didn't talk about it with Strootman, but we probably should talk about it. So if you might have read, there was kind of a bad way that Strootman was in with Marseille recently. I don't know if it was just this past season or if it was other seasons. Where apparently fans were kind of like whistling at him to leave because he's on some big wage thing that he must have had from when they signed him from Roma all those years ago, whatever it was. Maybe like 4 or 5 years, 3 or 4 years ago or whatever. So there was a big pressure, I think, for him to leave. I think he knew he wasn't going to play I don't think there was really bad blood between him and Marseille, but the fans were certainly like not for it. He wasn't going to play within the system that they had. So that was kind of the big impetus for him leaving. But I think the significant thing about this is the big wage bill that he's been on. The rumor anyway, I don't think there's anything that's actually been disclosed. Marseille is picking up most of the bill, or a good chunk of it anyway. So I thought it was kind of interesting that was one of the reasons and kind of the context for him leaving Marseille, just knowing also, we're not operating under a shoestring, but we're definitely trying to be as cost conscious as possible within our profit and loss. So it's good that we're getting a player like that with that level of skill and quality that, hopefully is going to not completely like drain our budgets. So.
Exactly. So people are not going to mumble too much about it too.
Yeah, hopefully not.
So next one coming up is Pisa Genoa. it's going to be again away. So it's
Yep.
going to be at Pisa. Pisa is going to have a second game in a row at home. But how do you see that match in your mind?
I think it's going to be tricky. Pisa have not had a very good start to the season, which is kind of semi-surprising, I think. I mean, they were obviously in the playoff to go up and lost to Monza, who also, by the way, do not look very good in the first two Serie A games so far.
Not for now.
It's only been 2 games, so I probably should bite my tongue a little bit. I'm not sure exactly what to make of this match, just because I think Pisa have a lot of tools to still be like a dangerous club that we're going against. And again, when we were looking at the calendar at the beginning of the announcement, whatever it was in August or July, this is a team that they're definitely in that same top 8 contender group, obviously, that you're talking about earlier, Fabry, and one that should be in the promotion mix for most of the season. They've not really been on all cylinders. Obviously, they've been scoring goals though. Three goals against Cittadella. They had another 4 against. Well, actually, no, they lost 4-1 to Pisa in the Coppa Italia, and of course 2 against Como last week. So, I think this is going to be an interesting game again for our defense. We need to have a much more solid outing in what we can do, but this is also a team that themselves are not exactly so far looking in depth to preventing goals. So if we can make sure that we're getting in behind their back line, if we've got some really good kind of combination play, or our forwards are being more active and more lively, I think it's probably going to be a pretty busy afternoon for both keepers. What do you think?
No, it's going to be an interesting game. I think it's going to be a tough one from both sides. I don't think it's going to be. One thing that I wanted to mention, which is like some small curiosity, and then I'll get back to the actual match itself. But I was reading this article, quite interesting, that Pisa and Genoa have been facing each other for several years. But there's been this interesting comment with respect to the last time Genoa had won in Pisa at the Arena Garibaldi, was in 1925. Which was a semi-final of that final that then Genoa had to then went to face Bologna, that very contentious type of Scudetto that was, they call it the stolen Scudetto and whatnot, under, the black shirts and era and whatnot. Yeah. Anyways, so since then, there have been a number of 3, 6, 9, 10, 13 matches at the Arena Garibaldi, a mix of Serie A and Serie B, and Genoa never won since.
Wow.
Since. So, I mean, at Pisa, right? So we're not talking about in general against Pisa.
Sure.
So ties and losses, but never anymore. We haven't won since. So I don't know. Break a leg. Let's hope to break this spell, sort of thing. So going back to the match. It's going to be a tough one. I don't know how. This is what we call in Italy like a tripletta, which means 1x or 12 or 2, which means the team at home can win, which is 1. X means the tie, and 2 means the away game, which is the away team, which is Genoa. I don't know. This one would be for me a tripletta. So I don't know who could win. Obviously, I think based on the last performances, Genoa will come in stronger. Based on what we also said before, I don't know if the new signings are going to be on the pitch as of yet. Some people are hoping for at least 1 or 2 of them, even if for the last few minutes. We don't know. We'll see. Yeah. Blessing will know based on their if even he has a chance to see them a little bit training and whatnot. But I don't know. It's hard to tell. Like again, based on the showings from Pisa, I'm gonna say an edge on Genoa. Only based on that, though.
I agree with you. I think if you were to tell me this scoreline at the beginning of the season, I would think we might even have our first loss, just given that it's away and it's at a very good team. But Pisa have not been out of the blocks in the same way. And one thing, I know we were messaging this. I guess maybe after the match on over the weekend, some more interesting betting odd lines that we're seeing, at least in the US right now. So I think these are BetMGM odds, but there's last week. So this is what we were talking about before. You can kind of bet on the match day goals for the game, and the Genoa Benevento match, I think, to take the under on 0.5 goals scored, which is a 0-0 game, of course, was plus 1,000, which is a pretty decent payout usually.
And I was like yelling at you, saying, "Damn you! Why didn't you tell us that we could have won so much money?"
Yeah, well, because like this is the type of thing, like these matches, like that match. I think if you were going to say, look, it's going to be a really scrappy game. It's the first time Genoa at home. Maybe there's some nerves. Benevento are just going to sit back because they just saw us and we ran through them. 0-0 is a score that isn't completely crazy. I'm going to go the other way with this one. So to go for 5.5 goals total is plus 1,400. I wouldn't be totally surprised if there were 6 goals in this match. I think hopefully we are starting to see more firepower from our team in getting shots on goal. We should have some substitutes. I hope that, we find the right combination, a little bit of curiosity in whether or not we have Yeboah or Ekuban in the starting lineup. I think that's probably more of the question than like an Aramu or an Ekuban or something like that.
You still think there's an edge between the two? Like
between Yeboah and Ekuban? I don't know if they're I have seen a little bit more confidence lately from Yeboah. Like we've talked about before, I think Blessin really trusts Ekuban. I don't think Ekuban has put in bad matches lately, so I don't agree with that assessment at all. But maybe having Yeboah on for the full pitch or the full 90 or close to it. I mean, he's got a good combination with Gudmundsson. Maybe there's something to be said about that. There was a couple of times. I mean, I think wasn't the offside goal also from Gudmundsson, or no, maybe there's a cross that he missed.
Yes,
in the last game. So I don't know. I mean, I don't feel very strongly about it, but I do think that's one part of the team sheet that could have a minor change. If it happens, then we're just going to see the reverse, and Ekuban will come on the 65th instead of Yeboah. So it's not probably going to make a massive difference. But anyway, could there be 6 goals in this game? I don't know. There were 7 with Cittadella versus Pisa. I think that we could have some stuff. We've not figured our defense out very well. I don't think they have either. It also evidenced by the draw against Como last week. So we'll see. It's out there though. If you guys are interested in checking that out, I think it's a BetMGM thing. And of course, I guess I should have some sort of disclaimer on betting responsibly or something. I don't know exactly how to do that.
But we're not advertising.
We're not advertising anything here.
But so. I'm gonna throw it to you. So let's do our. I forgot last podcast to actually ask you and our guest Francesco, what did you think of what score were you expecting from the game? So I'm going to ask you now. So Pisa Genoa final score.
So I think it will be 3-1 to Genoa. As much as I just propped up the 6 goal thing, I think 6 goals is possible.
You just said 6. So okay,
I think 6 goals possible.
Up to 6.
It's a bet that you could make. I think that could happen. I think it's going to end up 3-1 to Genoa.
3-1.
I think we'll see some activity on both sides. I think we'll probably have a scoreline that flatters us a little bit. I don't think it's going to be that big of a gulf in the actual gameplay. And one of the things we've seen from Genoa that I'm a little bit worried about, that I know we've talked about, they've had really bright spells and then they've kind of fallen off. And I wouldn't be surprised again if we saw that again against Pisa. So I think it'll be a high scoring match. I think we'll come out on top. But it's one of those ones that for sure can easily go the opposite way around. What do you think?
Absolutely. What do I think? So when we did the predictions for Venezia, I caught on. I was the only one that said 2-1 for Genoa.
Yep.
And I caught that. We didn't say anything about Benevento, thank God, because I would have not caught that.
Yeah, I don't think I would have either, honestly. I wouldn't.
But with Pisa, it's, as I said, it's a tripleta, so it could go either way. If I can only speak. I should speak by brain and not by heart. So I'm meaning not with my Genoa hat, but with I guess like a sportsman type of hat. I'm going to say it's going to end 2-0.
Okay.
for Genoa.
For Genoa.
Yes.
I like it. I think it's a sensible pick.
A nice clean sheet and 2 scores because, I don't know,
I think
just because Pisa is nothing against them, as you mentioned, just because they've shown that they're a little bit in trouble. I think they're not there yet, in my opinion, hopefully anyways. They're not there to recoup anyways. And
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really interesting match. It's a great early season test, even if Pisa aren't really in form right now. And I would love that too, if we get a clean sheet and hopefully get this defense to get a little bit more confident in their style.
We need that.
I think we really do. I mean, I would be, in a way, I don't think necessarily I would be as satisfied with this, because obviously we did have that last match against Benevento, but if we ended up with the clean sheet again against Pisa and not the win, and it was another 0-0, if we're able to kind of have that solidity, I wouldn't be totally upset. But I think we do need to kind of come away with 3 points just to make sure that we keep that momentum and the team keeps the belief in the vision, because that's one of the risks that I think we're all a little bit in the back of our minds right now, is this Blessin thing is not really a full season underway yet. And if we start seeing the results go the opposite way, I think you can start to see some players having their own ideas and a bunch of other stuff, which is never good. So
actually, let me add a little bit more depth to that. So
yeah,
I'm going to say doppietta of Caso, of Coda, sorry. So 2 goals by Coda, 1 assist by Gudmundsson, and 1 assist by Payet.
Oh, I like it. I actually think that you're right about that. This is something we got to check up on this after the match. If Payet has an assist, there were a couple really good balls that he played in this last match. So, let's see how it turns out. But I like that. I like the prediction and getting Coda off the score sheet too, because I don't think he scored in Serie. So
not yet. That's why I'm giving him 2 goals so he can catch up.
There you go.
One last thing before we wrap up. I wanted to read off something that I read again in an article, which I thought was just beautiful, almost like a tearjerker per se.
Yeah.
For someone that has been a Genoa fan since ever, back in the 90s, our ultimate still is our ultimate captain is, you probably heard about him, Gianluca Signorini. And that's why the number 6 that's what his number, and that's why it's retired. So no one can ever pick the number 6 in Genoa. And I can't remember, and forgive me for the Pisa fans, please forgive me for this, but I can't remember at what point, when did Signorini play also for Pisa, but he played as a captain for them as well. So there's going to be an initiative by the 2 teams, Pisa and Genoa. The 2 clubs are linked by, I'm just reading it, are the 2 clubs linked by the history of their cities, by the tradition of their challenges, and by a captain who left us too soon because he passed for a bad disease. But who is still imprinted in the minds of the Nerazzurri and the Rossoblu fans. So awesome. The 2 players from both teams were going to wear a T-shirt, jersey, or whatnot with his number. They're going to exchange it to each other, and it's just going to be a moment of recognition towards Signorini, which is, I just think it's just something always like, important.
It's part of, I mean, you want to recognize players that are really part of the fabric of the team like that, and it's special that also Pisa have that same memory of him, and obviously his performances and who he was goes without saying, but it's pretty cool that they're doing that.
And it's interesting that the initiative came actually from Pisa.
Yeah.
So it's important to say that, because I think it's just like a beautiful gesture by the club, and obviously Genoa is not going to say no to something beautiful like that, because it'll always and forever be in everybody's hearts.
Yeah, that's really cool.
So ready for the match on Sunday?
Yeah, I can't wait. I'm actually kind of liking this regular kind of appointment viewing that we've got each Sunday for the match. It's kind of fun. Or I guess we were Saturday last week, but yeah, it should be fun. I can't wait.
So just quick recap of what's happening is important matches. I'm just reading here to see what could be interesting. And forgive me for all the other teams that I'm not saying, but essentially we have Palermo Ascoli, which could be interesting to watch. We have, I'm just looking at from perspective also from contenders for Serie A promotion, just because they are at top, Benevento Frosinone.
Yep.
Cittadella Venezia. It'll be very interesting because they're very close to each other and they kind of hate each other. Again, because they're at top, but it's important also because of the other team. So Parma versus Cosenza.
Wow.
Go Lupi.
Man, can you imagine? I'm not going to say anything. Not putting anything out there.
And then Perugia Bari, Regina su Tirol, Como Brescia. Interesting. Cagliari Modena, Ascoli, no, these are already from next game. Sorry. No, that was it.
Can I say one thing? Like,
yep.
I'm not as familiar with all of the Serie B teams, so maybe this is sort of a funny comment, but I feel like there aren't those dud matchups in Serie B this season, like at all. Like when you watch Serie A or Premier League or something else, you get, like the Bournemouth versus Brighton or something, or I mean, that's kind of a bad example, but there's a lot of interesting team dynamics going on in the league right now. It's kind of a fun thing to kind of pay attention to.
Yeah, I don't actually think that we even talked about like what I know other friends have done in their podcasts, what they think. Obviously, most of the podcasts are on Serie A, like who is going to be like your top, like the whole ranking from 1st to 20th. Maybe we should do it. I'm going to suggest this to you so we can both get prepared for it. To do a ranking 1 to 20th once the transfer market closes.
I was just going to say once the market closes, they'll give us like the full picture.
Yeah, we can get a taste a little bit of the teams. We can see whatever they did or whoever everyone else has done on the transfer market, and then we can do a ranking. I'm just throwing it out there.
I'm all in. I'm all for it. I love it.
All right, so this is a wrap, I guess, for season. Yeah, right. Episode 14. I know, right? We're that senior. Anyway, thank you everybody for listening to us. We look forward to catching you again next week, and we're going to be looking super forward to watching also Pisa Genoa and tell you all about it.
Can't wait.
Forza See you Genoa. Next week. Ciao, Matt, and Forza Genoa.
Ciao, ciao.
You've listened to La Lanterna, a spotlight on Italian football, a podcast powered by Genoani Si Resta. Thank you for listening and see you next week.